Hey everybody, this is David Hood and Grayson Mann with the Orange Crush podcast. Welcome to the as I noticed in the game notes yesterday, the Appalachian State version of the podcast, or Appalachian State, however you want to say it. Don, I see the face there. They fuss in the game notes, and for that reason, Don, why would we bring you on for this particular podcast? Why? What kind of connection do you have to the Mountaineers?
Because I am a proud 1984 Appalachian State graduate. So,
I was, of course, welcome to Don Munson here, of course, the voice of the Clemson Tigers. Clemson takes on the Mountaineers tomorrow, 8 o'clock, ACC Network. Don, we brought you on obviously because of that connection, but I laughed in the game notes. They have a whole section, App State does, of don't call us Appy, don't call us Appalachian State, don't call us this, don't write it this way. We are Appalachian State. That's the way they put it.
oh, no,
We
no,
have
no, no. You're getting the pronunciation wrong. It's not Appalachian State, it's Appalachian State. Don't even go there, Hood. What? I don't care what their thing says. Stop. Just stop.
I knew I could get a rise out of you this early in the morning.
Stop.
But this podcast brought to you by Herb Tyler and the folks over at Chick-fil-A of Clemson and Seneca. Thanks to Lisa Nason of Nason Accounting over in Greenville. Grayson, all three of us were in the Mercedes-Benz Dome last week. We saw what happened. Clemson has a chance to come out this week, and as one person in the program told me, maybe a chance to heal a little bit against the Mountaineers, but it won't be easy.
No, it is not going to be easy. By any stretch of the imagination, it's not going to be easy. So, Apple come in here, they're used to winning in venues just like this. I mean, they have shown that's their history. It's funny, they win more often in venues like this away from home than they do against opponents like this in Boone. So, no, this is something they do and do well.
And you have the examples like Michigan, you have Texas A&M being the most recent one at Kyle Field. But Don, was there any game before that we're tracking way back in history that starts this? App State is a team to be reckoned with when it comes to these kind of games because they've talked about it all week with Clemson saying, hey, we understand the history with the Mountaineers. They don't mess around. They may not be the most talented team on the field, but there's a lack of fear that makes them so special. Did that date back even before Michigan with that kind of history?
Yeah, I mean, you go back 1983, Mac Brown comes rolling into Boone, North Carolina, his first head coaching job ever. I think he was 31, maybe 32 years old when he came. And his very first game, they go to Winston-Salem and knock off Wake Forest, 24-22. And so that was the first time that App had ever beaten Wake. So that's probably where you could say that it started. And I think a lot of people that are associated with Appalachian State throughout the years kind of say that Mac in 83 laid the groundwork really for where they are right now. He was only there a year after the 83 season. They went 6-5 that year. And he turned around, though, went and became the offensive coordinator for Barry Switzer at Oklahoma. Did that for a little bit, then was at Tulane. He was a head coach at Tulane. Then obviously from Tulane, parlayed that to North Carolina to Texas, then to ESPN, then back to North Carolina. So, there's a lot of ties, but a lot of people will say that 1983 year was really kind of the start of what kickstarted the App State program, certainly to where it is right now. Sparky Woods took over for him. After that, obviously Sparky, did very well, then became the head coach at South Carolina, where he didn't do well at all in Columbia. And a guy named Jerry Moore comes along, and Jerry, it was really I guess I would say 2001 season. I think that App State at that time goes to Western Carolina. That was the big rivalry in the Southern Conference for App and Western Carolina. They played for something called the Old Mountain Jug, and App had won the Old Mountain Jug something like, gosh, I don't know, 16, 17 times in a row over Western Carolina. Guy named Brad Hoover, who played for the Carolina Panthers, was a running back for Western. They beat App State. And there was a lot of people that were calling maybe for Jerry Moore's head and job at that time. and he ended up changing the offense, went to a spread offense, and it changed everything. Scott Satterfield was a quarterback at that time, now the head coach at Cincinnati. Then a guy named then you had a guy named Richie Williams who came in and took over at quarterback. He led them to their first national championship in 1AA football in 2005. Armani Edwards, the Greenwood product, comes along, wins 2 more national championships in 06 and 07, and that's where things kind of started. And of course, Armani was the quarterback that beat Michigan.
Going back to Armani, the year that they beat Michigan, I was still floating around for the Greenville News, covering a lot of college football games across the state. And 2 weeks after they beat Michigan, they come to Spartanburg to take on a ranked Wofford team, and it was 2 top 5 teams. And when people ask me, what are some of the best football games you've ever seen, they expect just to hear the Clemson games, right? But that game is in one of my top 3 or top 4. Wofford winds up winning an absolute slugfest, like 47-44 on a late field goal. And I remember kind of walking over to where Jerry Moore was standing after the game, and uh, wasn't any type of press conference setting or anything like that. He was just kind of talking off the cuff to reporters as his family surrounded him. And he grinned really big, just this big smile on his face. And he goes, "How much fun was that, guys? How much fun was that?" It's just infectious. And I thought, man, I could play for that guy. Armani Edwards had a great game, and it was a contrast in styles with Wofford with that veer option look. App State's throwing it all over the place, running kind of that option spread. Fantastic football.
That was the old Mike Ayers Wofford football teams back in those days, and it was pretty good. It's funny, App, I think back in the Southern Conference days was kind of the king of the hill, and there were always those teams that were trying to rise up, and Wofford had that run for a while. Elon came along for a little bit of time. They had a really good quarterback, and they threw it all over the place, but they never could quite get over the top of App. And the fact that that here's App that beats Michigan and then turns around and loses to Wofford. That's the beauty of playoff football on the FCS level now, or what I still call it 1AA, but that's the beauty of playoff football, is that you can have a loss like that and get into the playoffs. And I think that's what can help a team like Clemson, now that the playoffs have been expanded to 12, is that you can suffer a loss. App actually suffered 2 losses that year and still managed to win a national championship. So I think the expansion of the playoffs is going to be something that helps not just Clemson, but a lot of football programs that'll get an opportunity, because that's all you got to do. You just got to get to the playoffs, and give yourself an opportunity to work your way up the ladder.
And certainly App State, and amongst the group of 5 teams, is a favorite to potentially be one of those at-large teams at the end of the year. But not to beat a dead horse on this Georgia game, Don, but I'd love to get your thoughts on what you saw calling the game, doing so much research to make sure it's a quality product for your play-by-play duties. Just what did you see in Atlanta, and how can this Clemson team bounce back against App State, just specifically early on? I think a lot of fans are looking for something to quell what's been, I think, a tense week here at Clemson.
Well, I think you've heard Coach Sweeney talk a little bit about this, and I think that you can go a lot back to just the opening drive of the ball game for Clemson, and those very first couple of plays, as a matter of fact, for Clemson. Obviously, play number 1. Unfortunately, Cade Klubnik's not going to get an easier throw all season long than that throw to Philip Maffa. And everybody says, well, okay, and even Coach Sweeney has said that, if Maffa catches that, he's off for 15, 20, maybe as much as 40 yards. I'm not so sure, because you go back and look at it, there is a defender that is right there within it. So, can Philip run away from that defender? I don't know. But the fact that Cade delivered that ball down around the knees, it was a play that was, believe me, I watched it all during practice, knew that it was coming to open up the game. It was all set up. Cade knew that it was coming up, and still it seemed like the moment got to him. And so that was there. And then, obviously you have Brenningstool dropping a pass. You have a penalty that showed up early on. I think that Clemson last week needed to have some early offensive success to kind of get things going. And I can tell you, in talking with Coach Sweeney, that's what he believed that his club needed. And that's why he took the football. when they won the toss. That's exactly why he took the football. It's because he just felt like this is it. Let's get out there. Let's get some offensive success. Let's get going. Let's build upon what happened in the fourth quarter against Kentucky, and go from there. And it just didn't happen. And then field position. Field position is something that people have not talked about the Georgia game at all. Clemson never started a drive beyond their own 25-yard line. Never started a drive beyond their own. And particularly there in the first half, it seemed like they were pinned inside the 20 a majority of that first half of play. So I think that those things kind of come into it. Then you get into the second half. Georgia gets the second half kickoff, drives it for a touchdown. Now all of a sudden it's 13-0. Clemson does come down, scores 3, probably should have scored 7, had an opportunity there to score 7 and missed on it. And so you missed opportunity there, you score 3, and then what happens? Georgia just answers right back with another touchdown. The fact that Georgia had 3 touchdown drives in that second half of 75 yards or better, certainly was, I think, the biggest difference that happened in that contest.
Georgia came out, started with throwing the quick game, realized they weren't going to hit Clemson vertically, realized they weren't going to win the football game by running up the middle, started getting their playmakers in space, orbit motions. I was talking to the Washington, D.C. Clemson Club yesterday, and somebody said, that they were very disappointed that Wes Goodwin didn't make halftime adjustments. And I said, why did he have to make halftime adjustments? He'd given up 6 points and everything was great. Now you can say, maybe why didn't he adjust after the first drive or two? And I think they tried, but Georgia was doing a great job of getting people in space. When talking to other people, there's a lot of good with that defense.
Oh no,
A lot of good.
No, I think this is going to be a top 10 defense in the country when it's all said and done. When you start taking a look at the numbers, it's just people need to realize who they were also opening up against. They were opening against Georgia. I've talked to a lot of Georgia people who say that was Carson Beck's best game that he's ever played at Georgia. And that's saying something. Carson Beck Carson Beck to me is hopefully, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but hopefully, what Cade Klubnik can become, because Carson Beck was a guy that served on the bench for 3 years before he even got his opportunity to come in and be a starter. So, he was sitting there learning and learning and learning and just taking practice reps. And hopefully, as Cade gets a little bit older in all of this stuff. And I think that's the other thing is that people want to compare, basically what is a guy not even in a full 2 years of playing quarterback to guys that have been playing quarterback for 4 or 5 years. And you just can't do that. Now, but Cade's got to perform. I mean, let's all be really honest here. Cade has to perform, because if he doesn't perform, somebody else is going to be given the opportunity to perform. So yeah, there's pressure on Klubnik, there's pressure on this offense. They've got to find guys that can go out there and get things done, and that'll be part of the puzzle, I think, this week. On Saturday against App. I think they do it with the run. To be honest with you, App didn't stop East Tennessee State last week. They're not going to stop Clemson, I don't think, this week.
Yeah, and that attack with Phil Moff, I think in the first quarter alone against Georgia, he only had 5 for touches or so. So we asked Sweeney about it, and he attributed it to the lack of offensive snaps overall. I believe Clemson only played 52, 57 snaps. So
50, I think it was 52. There was only 112 snaps in the entire game. So it was the fewest snaps in the game, since 2006, I think, that Clemson has been involved with.
Yeah, pretty low number. And so when you look at sort of the rotation, because people wanted to see Wesco and Moore out there, obviously, and then how you build an offensive game plan with such a lack of time. Do you see this first quarter, I guess, at App State? I think that it's the most important quarter for Clemson's confidence, just going out there and trying to establish some momentum, maybe a touchdown drive or two. That starting with Phil Maffa obviously leans into the offensive line, which I thought against Georgia didn't play half bad. What did you see from Matt Luke's debut and how that offensive line has continued to grow?
Yeah, I think that was one of the highlights, was the way that the offensive line performed, in particular Ryan Lithicum. I think that us to go out and see, Lithicum is a guy that had played just I think 106 total snaps coming into the game against Georgia, and I thought that he held up very, very well. Did he make some mistakes? Yeah, he made some mistakes. But from what I've seen so far and talking a little bit with Ryan and just being around the offensive line this week, I think it learned as a group. Maybe the biggest thing that comes out of the Georgia game is the injury to Tate. We'll find out. I think they'll take Marcus through all the pregame stuff, and we'll find out what the plan is to do with Tate. But we'll find out here on Saturday, certainly.
I thought the offensive line was better than advertised. You can always point at a few things. Walker Parks played well in his return from injury, first time he's seen snaps since last September. I thought Tristan Lee did a great job on the blind side for Cade Klubnik. I thought all of those guys really held up, and the big part to me is something that Cade Klubnik said this week. He said they brought a blitz, and my five guys picked up six of them, and the seventh guy is mine. How long has it been since you've seen that a Clemson offensive line five pick up six and hold them out? And I think that's a testament to just what Coach Luke has done with this group.
Well, I think when you go back and you look at the run, basically really between 15 and 20 for Clemson football, you play in 4 or 5 national championship games over that period of time. And I think the most undersold part of those teams was the offensive line. I think the offensive line was way better than people ever wanted to give them credit for. And so this is a game. If you're going to compete at the elite level, then you better be able to control lines of scrimmage, and that means offensively and also defensively. I think Clemson has the pieces to control it defensively, and I think now the pieces of the puzzle are starting to come together where I think they can do it offensively as well. I think this is going to be one of those lines that as they go game to game and week to week is just going to get better and better and better. And part of the reason also is not just because of who's starting, but who the backups are. And I think that Clemson has the legit chance this season before it's all said and done to have 8 or 9 guys that can really perform well on that offensive line. Some of those are interchangeable pieces. Still, the cross training is still going on, but if you can have that kind of depth, because somebody's going down. I mean, somebody is going down. It's going to happen. So when somebody goes down, then you have to have that person that can step up, and you have to have some offensive line depth there. And I think that Clemson does have that.
Yeah, and especially if Marcus Tate isn't able to go on Saturday, I think Colin Sadler might be the first choice to throw out there. And he performed relatively well in his time in that second half against Georgia. And I think, Don, the thing that's fascinating to me is that looking at Clemson's schedule before Georgia, before week 0, you go, okay, this game here, maybe that game there. I don't particularly know. And then we get context. We get Florida State falling to 0-2, Boston College and Georgia Tech. Virginia Tech, a team that many felt was a college football playoff sleeper team. I'm putting in the air quotes for our Spotify audience. They fall to Vanderbilt. And now you look at Clemson's schedule, and we talked to Aaron Murray on Tuesday. He said, try to find me the loss on the schedule before they go potentially to Charlotte, if that ever comes. When you look at this schedule now, Don, and you look at the context of what the first week of college football has shown us, where are some concerns with the schedule, or maybe some ones where your concerns have been lifted?
Well, Grayson, I can tell you that, and I guess, this goes back, as Coach Sweeney has rubbed off on me so much, I don't even worry about looking at the schedule I'm a week to week guy. And I don't think that you can get caught looking at, because everything as we know it, unless you have a crystal ball, but things change so much week to week because all right, who's playing well, who's not playing well, who's hurt, who's not hurt. So you can't get caught in that. I mean, even after, using Florida State, even after they lose to Georgia Tech, who really thought that they were going to go home and get manhandled by Boston College? I mean, I knew that Castellanos was going to be a problem, but it was the running game that was a problem for Florida State. The fact that Boston College just lined it up and just pushed it right down their throats against FSU. So I'm more focused on, forget looking down the road. Let's take care of this week. Let's take care, because we all know this. If Clemson does not get off to a good start Saturday against App State, man, the natives are going to be restless. The natives are already restless, but man,
Yeah.
they're going to be, I mean, it's going to be pitchforks and torches. It's going to be all, I'm not going to say it's going to be as bad as Chad Morris's first game where they literally booed the Clemson team off the field at halftime. But I could see that if things, don't go well for Clemson in the first half, there are going to be a lot of upset folks. In this day and age, people are not afraid to display their displeasure. So let's just take care of this week before you start looking down the way. It is the biggest game of the season is this week. It's not sexy. People don't like hearing that, but it is. This is the biggest game of the year right here. You better win this one because if you lose this one, you're going to find out just how big it was.
All right, so that is a perfect segue into what will be the final question. And once again, we so appreciate your time. What does a healing perfect day look like for Clemson tomorrow night? What
Oh,
happens and you come out of it and you go, "Woo, we feel so much better going into this open day."
yeah, something like happened at Wake Forest, back in 2018, 62-3. Probably would is if you're asking for the ultimate best formula, that's it. That's it right there, where you just come in and just pummel Appalachian because no one's expecting Clemson to pummel Appalachian State. All right, no
Right.
one's expecting that. But if you come out and you can, say you win 42-21, the fact that you put 42 points on the board would be a big, big plus, to be honest with you. But so that's the perfect puzzle to me. Is that the perfect scenario is to see Clemson's offense get to the 40-point level, and then keep App State's in the below 25 points. So I have said all along this year that to me 25 points. That if Clemson's offense can just score 25 points in every game, not average 25 points, but just score 25 points in every game, they're not going to lose many games. Now, obviously, we would have lost last Saturday. Okay, that was going to happen. But other than that, I just don't know. I just don't know many teams that should be able to put more than 24 points on the board against this Clemson defense. So it is. There's a lot of pressure on the offense to go out there and perform well and get things done.
And I think that will do it from the Orange Crush podcast today. Don, you have any final words before we wrap up today?
I don't think so. I will say, one thing is that I'm always kind of cognizant of this week coming up. We sit here, what today is the 6th of September as we record this. So, next week will be the anniversary of Jim Phillips' death. And I tell people this all the time. Jim Phillips will forever be the voice of the Clemson Tigers. He will, I just occupy his chair. I'm just fortunate enough. It was great to have him as a mentor, have him as a friend. We particularly got pretty tight the last 3 or 4 years of his life and stuff. So I always try to explain that is that Jim will always be the voice of the Tigers. Just occupy his chair. But I will tell you this. It's the best job on campus. I mean, I have the best job on campus. Love everything that I do. I'm doing a soccer game tonight. I get to do, Clemson and Stanford
Stanford.
on the streaming side, and get to do that tonight. And I'll be involved, obviously, calling women's soccer games, and I call volleyball games, and I'll get an occasional softball game and all that kind of stuff. And I love it. I mean, they pay me to go to games, and it's for me. I have arguably the best collegiate job in all of college sports, and don't take it for granted. Love what I do, and it's hard for me to believe this is now my 31st year here going and covering Clemson athletics, and I'm 62 and half of my life has been covering Clemson athletics.
Congratulations are in order for sure on year 31, and your home debut for year 31 begins tomorrow night against App State. I want to thank Don Munson for his time. You can check him out, the Clemson Athletic Network, and he'll be on the call against the App State Mountaineers and for the rest of the year. So, guys, thank you as always for your support on the Orange Crush podcast. You guys have been killing it. This is Grayson Mann alongside David Hood with special guest Don Munson. Guys, have a fantastic day. Have a fantastic day. Stay safe this weekend and take care.